What you know what, just to be safe thing you did end up saving your ass later? Story 1. Learned CPR and first aid. Had to give CPR to a family friend when she collapsed from a heart attack, and thankfully she was brought back after being down for 15 minutes. She only had minor memory problems and mostly just couldn't remember that day. She's still here and kicking years later. Story 2. Was delivering pizza in a sketchy block of town late at night. Huge apartment complex with multiple buildings. Walking up to the front door, I noticed a couple guys wearing dark clothing about 100 foot behind me walking in my direction. Delivery was on the second floor, and by the time I reached her door, I heard the main door of the apartment complex open and close. She used to CC for the order and tipped in cash, so when I was putting the receipt into my bag, where I kept my cash, I actually pulled the rest of the cash out and stuffed it into my inner jacket pocket just to be safe, leaving just the change I had that night in the bag. Started to head down the stairs back out to my car, and two guys jumped out from behind the stairs, and the one had a gun pointed at me and told me to give them the money. I quickly handed them my bag filled with quarters, and they took off towards the back entrance of the apartment complex. I never ran so fast in my life back to my car. I wanted to make sure I was as far away as possible before they realized they robbed me of $3.50 in quarters. Reply 1. I used to be a shift manager at a pizza place, and I refused to send my drivers to certain areas at dusk/night because of this. I'm just glad you made it out safely. Reply 2. I once had to explain to a guy that the motel he was staying in, despite being 1 mile from the pizza spot, was not a location we'd be sending drivers due to its reputation. He got pissed, swore at me, and even threatened to come down there. Like, yeah, exactly my point. Also, if you come down here we can definitely make you a pizza. God, that place sucked. Story 3. I dropped my high school girlfriend off, then for some reason I locked the passenger door. Not 10 minutes later I was stopped at a red light and some scummy-looking dude tried to open up the door. I have no idea why I locked that door after she got out. I really didn't have a habit of that. No idea what would have happened if that guy got in my truck. Reply. Something similar happened to me. I was dropping my friend off at home. He lived in a sketchy neighborhood. I had my driver's side door locked, and as soon as he got out I immediately locked the other one. These three girls come running out of the bushes trying to open my car doors. One jumped on my hood and I fucking gunned it. She rolled off my car. The other chucked her drink at my driver's side door. I'm terrified to think about what they were going to do to me. Story 4. Was on a side-by-side vehicle mudding on some property a friend and I were visiting. Mid-ride, I turned to my friend and say, "Hey, you should probably buckle your seatbelt. Just in case." Not 1 minute later did he lose control and slide front first into a tree, going about as fast as this thing could go given the conditions. Both of us were okay, but the side-by-side was completely ruined. He looked at me right after and his eyes were as big as dinner plates. Story 5. My dad lost his glasses once. He was going to just use his old prescription, but last minute decided to just go to the optometrist anyway in case something changed. Turns out he had a tear in his retina and was booked for surgery within 24 hours. It was bad enough, they said, he probably would have gone blind really soon had they not caught it when then did. Story 6. $5 breakage insurance on a rental surfboard. Broke that fucker clean in half in my first 10 minutes. Story 6. Not my ass, but I was getting ready for school whilst Mum was vomiting in the bathroom. She said it was just a stomach bug and to just go to school, but mentioned her arm hurt. Something didn't sit right, so I called the ambulance from downstairs. They arrived and took her into the ambulance. She then proceeded to have 3 cardiac arrests and needed defibrillated each time. A double bypass later and she was up and about within a month. Paramedics told me she would have died 5 minutes after I left if I hadn't called. Story 7. Had some weird achy symptoms and went to the doctor even though I figured I was probably overreacting. Turns out I had cancer. Story 8. Normally I'm pretty impressionable and cave to peer pressure, but this one time when I was younger I was hanging with my friends and a couple of older high school guys I'd only met that day. The girls were all fawning over them, but I could tell they were idiots. When they all wanted to go for a drive with the guys, I thought, nah, I don't trust these guys and I think it's best I just call my parents and go home. I got a call the next morning from one of the girls who was passenger. One of the high school boys was driving, they'd had a serious crash and one of the girls wasn't wearing her seatbelt and hit her head on the dash and was in a coma for 6 months. She was in intensive care and rehabilitation for years. Still can't believe of all the days I decided not to go with the flow, it probably saved my life. Terribly sad about my friend. We were really close, but she never came right and her personality changed. I still wonder how successful she might have been and if we'd still be friends if that hadn't happened to her. Really sad. Story 9. Was watching my toddler nephew and he'd found a metal straw somewhere in the house and started playing with it. He was just tapping stuff and waving it around, but I'd just read a story on Reddit about a woman who got completely fucked up by a metal straw when she fell and it impaled her face, so I took the metal one from nephew and gave him a soft, squishy silicone one to play with instead. I'm not exaggerating when I say less than 5 minutes later, he fell like toddlers do and I saw the silicone straw all smushed into his cheek. I had to just sit for a while after that, lol. Story 10. On a road trip with my siblings and dad in Latin America, he lived there and we were visiting. On a highway at night, with clouds, no moon and no lights, this was a new highway that nobody likes taking now, as criminals often leave glass or spikes to puncture tires and rob you, or worse. We were driving and this guy was pulled over and waving for help. My dad stopped behind and the guy was scared and asked if we could light up his car while he changed a flat tire. He was terrified of being out where alone and rightfully so. Dad goes to get out to help and my sister grabbed him and said she didn't think this felt right. Dad assured us it was fine and almost got out, but sister grabbed him again. Right then a car flew by the door right where he would have been. 4 guys jump out, one grabs the man, puts a gun to his head and the others sprint to our car. There was a brief chase down the highway, but luckily their old Corolla didn't keep up with our Jeep and they gave up after 2 to 3 minutes of driving 170 kilometers per hour. My sister saved my dad's life, and probably ours, by making him stay in the car that extra few seconds. Edit, the guy with a gun to his head lived and was okay given everything. After the chase, we had to turn around and continue on the way we were originally going, as there were no other routes to get back home unless we backtracked 6 hours. After we passed the vehicle of the man, we saw he wasn't there anymore and we thought the worst. Luckily we ended up passing 4 National Guard vehicles about 2 kilometers later and saw that the man was with them talking to them. To answer, I've never known if the guy was in on it. The timing has always seemed off to me, however the look of fear in his face was so genuine when the guys jumped out that I can remember it perfectly 15 years later. Edit 2, the country in question is Venezuela. Story 11. I had a female patient coming for I-131 therapy. Patient must be not pregnant and to make sure we do a blood test 1 day prior to dosing. I checked the results on screen that was negative. I printed it out and put it in the patient file just in case, although we went paperless years earlier. After giving her radiation safety instructions and discharging her, she came a couple of days saying that she was late. The doctor inserted another pregnancy blood test and came out positive. The lab technician went to the previous negative blood test and changed it to positive. Haven't I printed the test, it would look like I dosed the patient while pregnant and could get fired. Staff before this incident used to make fun of me being paranoid. After this incident everyone started printing the results face with tears of joy. Because a lot of people asked and to answer questions ETA, I reported it to the head of department. He immediately involved the medical physics department and they calculated the dose to the fetus and found out she had to abort because the baby will be severely mutated. So they involved the OB/GYN also. Last thing I knew that a huge investigation was carried out and the patient filed an official complaint. I don't know what happened later. Everything completely changed, policies and procedures / hospital's information system / quality department was established / risk management department was established, etc. That was back in the beginning of 2007. The system was installed in the end of 2006. That was the first time anyone used an electronic system. ETA2, I wrote the reply and went to sleep and woke up never thinking that this would blow up. Wow. Thank you everyone for upvoting, and thank you kind stranger for the award. Thanks for everyone who wished me a happy cake day. You all made my day. Folded hands. Edit 3. That story happened in MENA, Middle East and North Africa. Story 12. Leaving a spare set of keys at the pub that I live above. Went out on St. Patrick's Day and had my coat stolen. I keep my keys in my coat. At 3 in the morning, I had genuinely no idea how I would have been able to get home otherwise. Definitely not some big life-saving moment or anything, but it was a relief, lol. Story 13. Lived in Baltimore at the time. Pulled up outside my place after getting off a late shift and had to get a backpack out of my trunk before going in. I noticed a group of teenaged kids hanging out on the corner and thought, nope. Called my roommate to come watch me walk to the door. About 10 minutes later, a girl comes running down the street bleeding, saying she got jumped by the group of kids for no reason. Stay alert out there, y'all. Story 14. Might sound ridiculous, but many years ago when I did my mandatory community service, was a thing in Germany as a counterpart to mandatory military service. There was a particular day in a pretty harsh winter. I usually went to work with my bike, as the streets were cleared of snow and ice anyway. At this day, I didn't take my helmet off because when I arrived at the place I worked I immediately started to shovel snow and didn't even walk inside first. My workplace was a huge and old four-story hostel in the woods. The roof was packed with snow and there were massive icicles hanging from the gutters. When a coworker asked me why I decided to look like an idiot with my helmet on, I jokingly replied it was for serious security reasons. A few moments later an icicle block fell down and hit me on the head and the shoulders. The impact was so brutal that it made me fall down on my knees. Shoulders were bruised, but my head was fine. I really don't know what could have happened if I didn't wear my stupid bicycle helmet for fun that morning. Serious injury for sure. Story 15. Not me, but a coworker. Was trying to separate some railroad ties with a crowbar as part of his yard work for the day, and when it popped, a nail flew and embedded itself in one of the lenses of his safety glasses he threw on because he had them for work. He keeps them on his desk as reminder. PPE is not just for the workplace, folks. Reply 1. Learned my lesson while using my weed whacker. Piece of debris hit me in the eye, took a couple of days for it to feel right again. Reply 2. Learned my lesson while using my weed whacker. Piece of debris hit me in the eye, took a couple of days for it to feel right again. Reply 3. I used to work for a recycling company collecting old fridges and freezers and packing them in a lorry to take to London to the big recycling plant. Picking up fridges was heavy work, and an average of around 135 plus fridges a day we'd collect and have to lift into the lorry. I picked up a tall fridge and basically did a semi-throw to get it up into the lorry, and a small shard of something flew directly into my eyeball. No safety goggles in a very dusty, dirty environment, so all day I was rubbing my eye as it felt sore and like something like dust was there, but no amount of washing with water or rubbing it helped. That night ended up going to emergency ward at the hospital, and they look at said eyeball, which by now is bruised from my constant rubbing and liking worse for wear. After tests and having purple type dye put into my eye, they said I had scratched my cornea with whatever hit my eyeball. They were talking about getting surgery to limit long-term damage, etc., but gave me eye drops and a topical cream and said to return in a few days for follow-up. Luckily that helped heal the eye, and they said no more damage, etc., and to finish eye drops and use safety goggles. I was very lucky, and at 47 years of age still get 20/20 vision with eye tests. If there is safety equipment, use it. Story 16. Saved the GPS location of my vehicle on Google Maps before exploring a national forest with a road trip buddy. We grabbed some fishing poles and head out towards the nearest water location on our map to hopefully catch a couple fish. Turns out it was a swamp, not a lake, and we got so incredibly turned around it could have ended very badly. We really didn't go that far in from where we parked, but somehow ended up on the other side of the swamp without realizing it. Drizzling rain, mosquitoes, bear tracks, and the sun started going down before we found the car. Without the GPS coordinates saved, it would have been a cold, wet night in the woods at a minimum, and more than likely a search and rescue required situation. Story 17. Worked alone in a gambling/video poker place, closing. Strange guy came in and started making small talk with me. I was expected to be kind and friendly to everybody who came in, so I was doing that. I decided to send a message to my boyfriend and a friend, and then something in me told me to take a picture of the guy as he moved closer to the counter I was behind. I snuck one real quick and sent it to said friend since she was awake. She called me immediately as she drove the 20 minutes to my job. An hour before I got off. I'll add, I didn't drive, so I had no vehicle in the now abandoned parking lot, the only car being his, which was conveniently backed in, right next to front door. 2 days later, there was a missing persons report released of someone who was a very familiar build and features that I have and suspected trafficking in the area. She went missing later that same night. He left after my friend showed up. I've never had such an uneasy feeling in my life, and I truly think sending those messages are what saved my life. He was waiting for me to get off work at 1 a.m. Our hours were right on the front door.